They expect you to react. They expect anger, explanations, or noise. But the moment you go silent after disrespect, something shifts. Because silence isn't weakness. It's the moment you take your power back. Silence withdraws access and restores your control because access is the real currency in every interaction. People don't disrespect you because they are powerful. They do it because they believe they have permission. Permission comes from access. Access to your emotions. Access to your reactions. Access to your explanations. The moment someone disrespects you and you immediately respond, defend, clarify, or argue, you are silently telling them you are important enough to disrupt my inner state. That is the trade most people don't realize they are making. They think they are standing up for themselves, but what they are actually doing is handing over control of their nervous system to someone who has already shown a lack of respect. Control is not about dominance. It's not about winning the moment. Control is about deciding what deserves your energy and what does not. Silence is not passive, it is selective. When you choose silence after disrespect, you are not confused, scared, or defeated. You are making a deliberate decision to remove someone's influence over you. You are closing a door without slamming it. You are saying, without words, you don't get access to this part of me anymore. Disrespect is often a test. Sometimes it's conscious, sometimes it's instinctive. People push boundaries to see how far they can go. They say something sharp, dismissive, or humiliating, and then they watch. They watch your face, they listen to your tone, they wait to see if you will react. Reaction is information. Reaction tells them where your limits are, how emotionally invested you are, and how easily they can provoke you again. Silence gives them nothing to work with. No data, no leverage, no emotional feedback loop. When you stay silent, the power dynamic changes immediately. The other person expects resistance, explanation, or confrontation. When it doesn't come, their mind fills the gap. Humans are uncomfortable with unresolved situations. Silence creates uncertainty, and uncertainty forces reflection. Now they are left alone with their behavior. They replay the moment. They wonder what you are thinking. They question whether they crossed a line. That internal dialogue is far more powerful than anything you could have said out loud. Restoring control also means protecting your self-respect. Every time you over-explain yourself to someone who disrespects you, you shrink yourself to fit their understanding. You lower your value by trying to prove it. Silence communicates that your worth is not up for debate. You don't negotiate dignity. You don't argue your humanity. You don't chase basic respect. You simply remove yourself from environments where it's missing. There is a difference between silence and avoidance. Avoidance comes from fear. Silence comes from clarity. You are not silent because you don't know what to say. You are silent because you know exactly what would happen if you did speak. You know the argument would spiral. You know the conversation would turn into justification. You know your energy would be drained trying to convince someone who already decided how they see you. So you choose the higher ground, not because you are above them, but because you are responsible for yourself. Silence also interrupts emotional manipulation. Disrespect is often paired with provocation. The goal is to trigger you, to pull you into a reaction that can later be used against you. Once you react emotionally, the narrative shifts. Now it's no longer about the disrespect, it's about your reaction to it. Silence denies manipulators the reaction they are counting on. It keeps the focus where it belongs, on their behavior. When you stop giving access, you begin to feel your nervous system settle. Your breathing slows. Your thoughts become clearer. You realize how much energy you used to spend explaining yourself to people who were never listening. Silence gives you space to observe instead of engage. Observation builds awareness. Awareness builds control. Control also means timing. Silence doesn't mean you never speak again. It means you don't speak from emotion. You don't respond while triggered. You don't try to fix disrespect in the heat of the moment. If you choose to speak later, it comes from a place of steadiness, not urgency. Words spoken from control carry weight. Words spoken from reaction lose it. People often confuse silence with losing. But losing what? An argument with someone who doesn't respect you was never a win to begin with. Silence reframes the entire situation. You are no longer trying to be understood by someone committed to misunderstanding you. You are no longer participating in a dynamic that benefits them more than it benefits you. When access is withdrawn, patterns are revealed. Some people adjust their behavior because they recognize the boundary. Others become louder, more disrespectful, more provocative. That escalation tells you everything you need to know. Silence acts as a filter. It separates those who value you from those who only valued their access to you. Restoring control through silence also strengthens your internal authority. You begin to trust yourself more. You stop looking outward for validation. You realize that not every comment deserves a response, not every provocation deserves attention, and not every person deserves proximity. Your self-esteem becomes quieter but stronger. Silence is a decision to prioritize long-term peace over short-term satisfaction. Reacting might feel good for a moment. It might feel like release, but it often leaves behind regret, exhaustion, and damaged self-respect. Silence may feel uncomfortable at first, especially if you are used to explaining yourself. But discomfort is often the sign that you are breaking an old pattern. As you practice silence, you notice something subtle but powerful. People begin to treat you differently, not because you demanded respect, but because you no longer tolerate disrespect. You don't announce boundaries. You enforce them through absence, through calm withdrawal, through the refusal to engage in dynamics that drain you. Silence after disrespect is not about punishing the other person. It's about reclaiming yourself. It's about recognizing that your attention is valuable and finite. It's about choosing where your energy goes. When you stop giving access to those who misuse it, you take back control over your emotional world, your mental clarity, and your sense of self. And that control becomes visible in the way you carry yourself, in the way you pause before responding, in the way your presence no longer feels available to just anyone who wants to test you. Because silence teaches you that you don't need to be loud to be powerful. You don't need to react to be respected. And you don't need to explain yourself to remain whole. Respect is felt most when it is no longer offered because many people only recognize its value after they lose access to it. While respect is present, it feels ordinary, expected, almost invisible. It becomes background noise in relationships, conversations, and interactions. People grow accustomed to being listened to, accommodated, forgiven, and emotionally considered. They stop noticing the effort behind it. They stop acknowledging the restraint, patience, and maturity it takes to keep showing respect, even when it isn't returned. When respect is freely given, it is often taken for granted. It is mistaken for tolerance. It is misunderstood as weakness. Some people interpret your calmness as permission. They assume your politeness means they can push further, speak sharper, behave worse. They don't think you will change because you haven't yet, so they keep taking, crossing lines slowly, casually, confidently. The moment respect is withdrawn, everything shifts. The absence is loud. The space it leaves behind creates discomfort. Suddenly, the same person who ignored your boundaries starts to feel the distance. They notice the shorter responses, the lack of emotional availability, the missing warmth, and only then do they begin to realize what they had access to before. Respect isn't felt through lectures or demands. It's felt through contrast. When someone experiences life without your consideration, without your patience, without your willingness to engage, the difference becomes undeniable. Silence, distance, and emotional neutrality communicate more clearly than confrontation ever could. Withholding respect is not about becoming rude or cruel. It's about becoming unavailable to those who misuse it. You stop offering your presence to people who don't know how to handle it. You stop extending understanding to people who repeatedly choose disrespect. You stop giving emotional labor to those who never intended to reciprocate. People often try to teach others how to respect them through words. They explain their feelings, they describe their boundaries, they justify why something hurt them. But explanation doesn't create respect. Consequences do. And one of the most powerful consequences is absence. When your respect is no longer on the table, people feel the loss immediately. There is a deep psychological effect in losing something you assumed would always be there. When someone realizes you are no longer trying, no longer accommodating, no longer engaging, it forces a moment of self-awareness. They replay interactions, they reconsider their tone, they question whether they went too far. This reflection rarely happens during arguments, it happens in silence. Respect also changes meaning when it's no longer offered. It stops being something you give away automatically and becomes something earned through behavior. You are no longer rewarding disrespect with attention. You are no longer teaching people that they can treat you poorly and still have full access to you. This shift is uncomfortable for people who benefited from your respect without valuing it. They may accuse you of changing. They may say you become cold, distant, or arrogant. What they are really reacting to is the loss of entitlement. They are adjusting to a version of you that no longer prioritizes their comfort over your dignity. Withdrawing respect restores balance. It brings your self-respect back into focus. You begin to see how often you minimized yourself to keep peace, how often you stayed polite to avoid conflict, how often you gave understanding where none was returned. When respect is no longer offered freely, your standards become visible, even without words. Respect withheld also teaches discernment. Not everyone deserves the same level of access to you. Not every relationship deserves the same energy. When you stop offering respect to those who repeatedly disrespect you, you create space for relationships where respect flows naturally, without effort or negotiation. There is strength in emotional restraint. It shows maturity. It shows self-control. It shows that you don't need to punish, insult, or explain. You simply adjust your behavior. You become less available. You disengage calmly, and that calm disengagement carries authority. People feel the loss of respect because it removes validation. It removes the mirror they used to feel important. When you stop acknowledging them the same way, they feel smaller. Not because you made them that way, but because your attention was part of what made them feel significant. Respect is powerful precisely because it is optional. When you choose not to offer it, you remind others that it was never guaranteed. It was a choice, and choices can change. This is why silence and distance are so effective. They communicate that something has shifted without creating a scene. They allow the other person to feel the impact without giving them a target to argue with. No debate, no defense, just a clear emotional boundary. Over time, you stop needing others to recognize your worth. You stop waiting for apologies. You stop hoping people will suddenly understand. You realize that the removal of respect is not about changing them. It's about protecting yourself. When respect is no longer offered, clarity emerges. Some people step up. They reflect. They adjust. Others fade away. Both outcomes serve you. You are no longer stuck trying to fix dynamics that drain you. Respect, once withdrawn, becomes unmistakable in its absence. It lingers in the quiet. It echoes in the distance. It reshapes how people perceive you, not because you demanded it, but because you stopped giving it where it was wasted. And in that restraint, your presence becomes heavier, your silence more meaningful, and your value more clearly defined.